evening, residents and board members. I'd like to call to order our regular board meeting for Monday, March 25th, 2013. Will everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Witt, will you please take the roll call?
Yes, Mr. Brado.
Here.
Mr. Capral.
Here.
Mr. Swikowski.
Here.
Mr. Tominello.
Here.
Mr. York.
Here.
Mr. Witt. Here. Mr. Verkust.
Here. Thank you. Next on our agenda is the approval of the consent agenda, including the approval of the regular board meeting minutes from March 11, 2013, approval of the bills in the amount of $833,321.97, approval of the February 2013 revenue and expenditures report, approval of the Relay for Life of Harrison Township to sell superhero dum-dums to help solicit donations and distribute information for the local relay and the American Cancer Society at the intersection of Crocker and Metropolitan Parkway on Saturday, April 20, 2013. Approval to execute the 2013 county's annual dust control program agreement to provide 2 brine applications in the township not to exceed $8,000, and the 2012 year-end treasurer's investment holdings report.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Support. A motion by Mr. York with support by Mr. Swikowski. Discussion, board members? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next is the approval of the regular agenda. There were no proposed changes to the agenda. Is there a motion to?
Make a motion to approve the regular agenda as proposed.
Okay.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Tominello with support by Mr. York to approve the agenda. Discussion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Next is the announcements. I have a few announcements here. Harrison Township Fire Department's annual Easter egg hunt will take place this Saturday, March 30th at the Lance Cruz High School football field with some help from Parks and Rec. Games and activities begin at 10 a.m. and the hunt will begin promptly at 11 a.m. The event is the Easter egg hunt is open to residents 12 years old and younger. Harrison Township Library is hosting multiple events throughout April. Story Hour will be held Saturday, April 18th from 11 a.m. to noon. The Story Hour will be wind and air themed. All children must be accompanied by an adult. Cooking with Herbs will be held on Tuesday, April 23rd from 6 to 7 p.m. Gourmet Garden Hour will be coordinating that event. Tales with Tales will be on Saturday, April 27th from 11 a.m. to just after noon. Each child will get 15 minutes to read with Patty, a therapy dog. Pre-registration is required and all children must be accompanied by an adult. Also on Saturday, April 27th is the Let's Move Festival of Races. You can go to their website, www.letsmovefestival.com, for road closures and race times. And the Harrison Township Parks and Recreation Committee will be hosting the annual Run Like a Mother event. That'll take place on May 11th at Lake St. Clair Metro Park. Participants can take part in a 1-mile fun walk with Tootsie the Clown, Zumba with Danny, and 5K and 10K races, timed by Hanson's Race Management Team. All ages are welcome. Prizes will be awarded. For more information, please visit the township website, or you can call the supervisor's office at 466-1445. Any other announcements? I see we have someone, I'm going to guess, from the Historical Commission.
Yes. Linda Karcheski, Harrison Township Historic Commission. Since we haven't been kept with an update on what's happening with our building, are we moving, we're staying, or what? We decided to go ahead with our open house, and we're going to have it on June 2nd from 1 to 4. We'll be passing out flyers in a couple weeks. Too soon is, if you put them out too soon, everybody forgets it. So we'll have them out in a couple weeks. And unless you have some information for us on what's happening,
Unless
you have some information for us,
I can certainly provide an update, sure.
that would be helpful so that we know, since nothing's ever said to us and been watching the meetings and nothing's been said, and we, would like to know, because it is now the spring, and since we got the first grant, it's going on 2 years, and nothing's going on. And, we'd like to keep the building up. We'd like to plant stuff, but we don't want to waste our money either. So is there possible for you to let us know what's going on?
Sure. Yep. I can do that now if you'd like.
Yes, I would, in
Yep.
case there's something I have to ask you.
We've met with the school on several occasions, representatives of the district. There's been certainly an interest on their part as well as the township's part. We've discussed the appraisal of properties to try to come up with what might be an equitable exchange. Certainly, the value of the land at Jefferson and Lance Cruz is in excess of the value of the land over here next to the football field. So we discussed some different options. What we ran into, though, was the clerk and the treasurer and myself have been meeting. One of the concerns we have at this point is whether or not the move to that building will result in $1,000 or $1 million of improvements necessary to the building. And we feel that in order to give the board, all the information, we need to have a pretty good idea of what costs we'll need to put into that building, because although we have no reason to believe that the building is not secure or sound or structural, the way that it was used by the school district is certainly different in some ways than the way we would use it. The volume of public that visit our buildings is certainly a lot higher than the daily traffic that the administration building received. So we're working right now with Wade Trim and one of their associates who has architectural background to help us develop some rough estimate of what that cost would be before we would make a decision to enter into some agreement.
And do you know when you're going to get this
Estimate?
information from him?
That would be, that's a great question. Mr. Newmer probably isn't prepared to speak to that now, but it's something we hope to do very soon. So,
If you want to speak, be my guest. But, I mean, it would really like to know, is it going to happen in a month, 2 months?
Well, I can tell you
going to
this-
know your answer, or?
yeah, I can tell you this much. Even upon receipt of that estimate, and then the board, maybe looking at that option, the physical act of moving into that building, is probably not going to be something in the next few months that we're going to be able to do. But if we enter into that decision, we're certainly not going to make an arrangement to purchase or acquire that property through some agreement and then not move into it. The difference is there's likely to be some work that would have to be done to that building, so
So we're talking another year, 2 years. So
Yeah,
in the
could
long
be.
run, I could have had my ramp put up. We could have used that building all this time.
right. Now, I know that you asked to approach the board for the historical commission. I mean, if you want to get into some
Well,
banter or
no,
public
it's
comment,
just, it's all together because this is part of the announcement.
Sure.
If I'm not gonna be, if something's gonna happen, then we wouldn't have it, but it sounds to me like you're not prepared. So here's my
Not
next.
prepared?
You're not prepared to move us.
Yeah.
So
There's nothing
it's
we
just-
could have possibly done to say that we were gonna be moved into that building by, say, for example, this summertime. We discussed pretty openly that process is gonna be something that's probably years, not a couple of weeks.
So
It's not months.
so in other words, I could have had my ramp done already. We could have been using, since it's gonna be years, and we probably could have moved that ramp right along with the building. And again, that's the second time now. So here's my next question. We would like to have the open house in June. Is it possible maybe that you can get somebody from the building department or that maybe someplace in the township that in one of your buildings or that somehow by that back door, I know we can't have a ramp there, but maybe we can get some stairs there so that if we want to open the door, that we could at least have stairs and nobody will fall out the door. In other words, we don't have to put a big sign there, you know. Do you think maybe you could help us out there, since you,
Yeah, no, yeah. I think there's probably an appropriate venue to discuss the options, and I don't think during announcements is the appropriate
Okay,
one.
so, well, this
if
is
you're
what I'm
interested in
asking
some
you for,
improvements in
so
that
that
building, the time to do that would certainly be any time to approach any one of the folks on the board, certainly myself, during practically any time that we run into you, but I don't think now is the time that we enter
okay,
into
well,
debate
I'm
about
asking
what
you
we do
now
in
so
building.
that you can maybe find out this information and get back with me. How's that? Because I can't run to the township anytime and a couple times I've been there, I honestly, you were at a meeting or you were someplace else.
I was in
and-
the other room the other day when
Right,
you were.
and you were busy.
Yep.
And then when I came in, you were talking to somebody and I didn't want to interrupt you.
Sure.
So this is the only time I really missed another meeting to come here.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Any other announcements? Hearing none, we'll go to the next item on the agenda. We have resolutions. Mr. Witt?
Yes, at a regular board meeting of the Board of Trustees for the Charter Township of Harrison on Monday, March 25th, 2013, the following resolution was adopted. Whereas Donna Nobles has given distinguished service to Harrison Township, and whereas Donna Nobles volunteered her time to serve the township as a member of the Waste Hauler Committee and the Waste Service Hardship Board, and whereas Donna Nobles dedicated herself to her appointments and offered her advice and expertise relative to the matters that concern the Waste Hauler Committee and the Waste Service Hardship Board, and whereas Donna Nobles has shown herself to be an excellent representative of the local community through her commitment and service on the Waste Hauler Committee and the Waste Service Hardship Board, and now, therefore, therefore be it resolved that on behalf of the residents of Harrison Township, the Board of Trustees wishes to thank Donna Nobles for her service to the community and to wish her long life and happiness. And I'd offer that as a motion.
Support.
We've got a motion by Mr. Witt with support by Mr. York. Discussion, board members? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, Mr. Witt, will you take a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Mr. Witt? Yes. Mr. York?
Yes.
Mr. Brado?
Yes.
Mr. Capral?
Yes.
Mr. Swakowski?
Yes.
Mr. Tominello?
Yes.
Mr. Verkest?
Yes,
Resolution is adopted.
thank you. And thank you to Mrs. Nobles for the service that she provided to our community. We also have another resolution.
Yes. At a regular board meeting of the Board of Trustees for the Charter Township of Harrison on Monday, March 25th, 2013, the following resolution was adopted. Whereas Roger Petrie has given distinguished service to Harrison Township, and whereas Roger Petrie volunteered his time to serve as a member of the Civil Service Commission for 10 years, beginning his service in 2002, and whereas Roger Petrie has taken the time and opportunity to make himself familiar with the Charter Township of Harrison Fire Department and the rules governing the Civil Service Commission, and whereas Roger Petrie has shown himself to be an excellent representative of the local community through his commitment and service as the board appointment to the Civil Service Commission, and now therefore be it resolved that on behalf of the residents of Harrison Township, the Board of Trustees wishes to thank Roger Petrie for his service to the community and to wish him long life and happiness. And I again offer that as a motion.
Support.
All right, we've got a motion by Mr. Witt with support by Mr. Swakowski. Discussion, board members? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, Mr. Witt, will you take a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Mr. Witt, yes. Mr. Swakowski?
Yes.
Mr. Brado?
Yes.
Mr. Capral?
Yes.
Mr. Tominello?
Yes.
Mr. York?
Yes.
Mr. Verkest?
Yes,
The resolution is adopted.
thank you. And again, and also thank you to Mr. Petrie for his service to the township and residents. Next on our agenda, item C1, we have some appointments. First is item C1, Mr. Witt.
Yes, this is for the firefighters representative on the Civil Service Commission. The Harrison Township Professional Firefighters Union Local 1737 conducted their election and chose Bill Mandeville to serve as their representative. It's for a 6-year term to expire February 25th, 2019. So we're just, it's their choice, we're just acknowledging it, basically.
Yep, okay,
We still need a motion.
Yeah, we need a motion
we
to
do need a
acknowledge
motion.
Okay,
it.
I'll make that motion.
all right.
Support.
All right, we got a motion by Mr. Tominello with support by Mr. York to acknowledge the representative, the appointment of that, or that choice of that representative. Discussion, board members? Hearing no discussion, seeing no public comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Next, we have appointments to the Environmental Committee. I'm gonna address I guess they're separate motions. So we've received an application for appointment from Miss Amanda Oparka and Miss Lynn Conlon for the Environmental Committee. Miss Oparka currently works for the Clinton River Watershed Council, and she has a degree in environmental studies from Central Michigan University. I believe her educational and professional background would be an asset to the Environmental Committee. I also believe that Miss Lynn Conlon's passion for the environment and community would be an asset to the committee. I'd like to recommend the appointment of each of these individuals for a 3-year term to expire March 25th, 2016.
Want to do both of them right now, or? Oh, there's two appointments, I'm
There are
sorry.
2 appointments. I don't know
Okay.
that there's any reason why we can't have a motion to appoint both.
I'd make a motion to appoint Miss Amanda Oparka and Miss Lynn Conlon to the Environmental Committee for 3-year terms, which expire March 25th, 2016.
Support.
Okay, we've got a motion by Mr. York with support by Mr. Brado. Discussion, board members? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Next, item C3, board members, we've received a notice of resignation from Ms. Donna Nobles for the Waste Hauler Hardship Committee. We also received an application for appointment from Ms. Patricia Carrier for the Waste Hauler or Waste Service Hardship Committee. Ms. Carrier has been involved with the St. Vincent de Paul organization for 13 years and has experience in making financial decisions while respecting individual privacy. I believe her past experience would be an asset for the Waste Service Hardship Committee. I would like to recommend the appointment of Ms. Patricia Carrier to the Waste Service Hardship Committee for a 2-year term to expire August 9, 2014.
Mr. Chairman, move to accept the resignation of Ms. Donna Nobles and appoint Mrs. Patricia Carrier to the Waste Hauler Hardship Committee for a 2-year term to expire August 9, 2014.
Got a motion by Mr. Swakowski.
Support.
Support from Mr. Caprell. Discussion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, board. Next on the agenda, item D1, regarding road improvements. Board members, in recent months, we've received many inquiries about road paving and SADs. In 2009, Wade Trim supplied the board a study addressing the road conditions and some of the options that were available to us. It appears with the interest from the residents, there may be some value in taking another look at this. Before we proceed, we need to address several issues, such as a plan to address various streets. Some of our streets are private, gravel, etc. How potential road improvements might interface with water and sewer projects, and a potential timeline. After discussing the matter with Mr. Newmer, our engineer, I would propose forming a committee to investigate these various issues, bring back a recommendation to the board. The study that was provided to the board in 2009 was not road-specific, but just a generic study based on number of miles of road in various conditions. I think there's more of a need to nail down the numbers and the conditions of various roads in the township in order to take this a little bit further. That would require some field work and possibly some engineering work to support that. When I asked Mr. Newmer about a potential estimate, he had estimated somewhere between a $5,000 and $10,000 range, which is real broad, but a rough estimate based on what this committee might request and what direction they might take. So before we have individual streets looking at SADs, I think we owe it to the residents to take a look at what some of our neighboring communities have done and possibly consider something, broader based or a larger plan. No plan that we might propose is going to go into place, whether it's an SAD or whether it would be something as expansive as a millage, without a vote of the people or an approval of the people. But I think we owe it to the residents to take a look at something comprehensive and let the folks decide if that's something they'd wanna do. And before we could really put something before this board, and even as far as the voters, we've gotta know ourselves what some of those costs are, what some of the advantages and disadvantages are. That would be the reason why I would propose forming this committee.
I just want to add, Ken had approached me about this, and I mean, within the last 3 weeks, I've probably got a half dozen phone calls about people wanting to start SADs with roads. I mean, this is something where people are looking at how they can improve their roads, and if we can do some of the legwork to start it off, I think people would be in a better position down the road.
Well, I wasn't approached about this, so I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
I guess I've been around here for a while now. You know, SADs, people come, they have a dirt road, they want to do an upgrade, you know, whatever the case may be. Sidewalks, roads, dredging. You know, they come, I mean, I would think that if somebody is coming for an SAD, it's because their road is pretty dilapidated, or maybe they're just tired of living on a dirt road. And, you know, obviously there's an economic benefit to, if you're living on a dirt road, putting that street pavement in. I think that everybody I've ever talked to over the last 8 years, they say, you know, your housing value is going to go, you know, probably 15 to 30,000 just by doing these roads. When those SADs come in, you know, it's always a resident-driven item. So I'm not seeing a connection between the SADs and doing this study. Whether or not we do this study, I don't think has any impact on those people and whether or not they're gonna do the roads. And as far as the water sewer, you know, we have probably $500,000 worth of plans sitting in the water sewer department already, you know, somewhat engineered for a lot of the water sewer. We know that if somebody comes in and puts a road, what we're gonna do with the water sewer. I think that we've already been over that in my first year, and I know Adam wasn't there, but, you know, my first year in office, we had our old engineer, and we sat over at the table there for 10 hours, actually, one Saturday. And we went through the whole water sewer distribution plan. I mean, just the nuts and bolts of everything. So that side of the equation should be pretty well set on what we need to do depending on these SADs. You know, if we're doing this, you know, for $10,000 for yet another study that we're gonna put in a drawer, I probably have $500,000 of studies sitting in my office in a drawer that we never address. And we don't address them because as we sit here tonight, we don't have a funding source readily available to do most of these projects. You know, we were on the committee, you know, we were looking, I think it was Jan, Ken and myself were on a committee to look at the roads and the sewers in the middle of the township here. You know, the board did spend some money, and we did look into it and the costs, and you know, it's gonna be quite expensive, you know, in the, I think, $20 million range for everything after water, sewer, and everything.
I think it was 11,
Was it 11? Okay.
which is still a good number.
No, that's fine.
Still, yeah.
26 million is the number 8 years ago to fix our dilapidated infrastructure. So $11 million to do that. You know, doing another study for $10,000, just, and maybe I'm missing something, it just doesn't seem, you know, that I'm willing to spend that right now in, you know, hard economic times, nobody's getting raises, we're asking unions for, you know, concessions, and just to put another study in a drawer, I don't see the need.
Okay. I know that when we did the, when Mr. Newmer approached us on the availability of grants and revolving funds for, I think it was the S2 program, but basically to look at adding sewers to the center of the township, the discussion was had at that time about this repository of all the engineering plans for sewers, and as I recall, and once we looked into it, they're in fact there is not already designed or engineered sewers for the township. So I know that's been brought up in the past, but there is not a whole system or even as far as we could tell, really anything beyond some preliminary estimates of sewers for the center of the township. It's important to note that as residents bring us requests for SADs and address them individually, what we're encountering is basically two estimates. One estimate is for them to just say, we'd like to grind up and recap the road or regrind and lay asphalt. The other is, well, what if we address the infrastructure that's underneath? And in some cases, we've got infrastructure underneath the roads that's in major need of replacement. In some cases, that infrastructure may still have some life left on it, but the folks don't want to address the roads. How the road repairs and the infrastructure relative to water and sewer in some cases interface is one issue. Another issue that we're, learning about is that, and we also heard this from the Department of Roads, that some of the best money to be spent on some of our roads is not when the roads have deteriorated to the point where they're more cold patched than they are original surface. So if you can address some of the roads that are reaching a cracking stage and cap those roads, the cost is 10% of what that cost would be to rebuild that road. So as opposed to waiting until folks say, well, we've allowed our road to deteriorate an additional 5 or 10 years, and now we're looking at $200,000 per mile to replace the road, we're saying that quite possibly an investment of $20,000 per mile may get more than just another 10 years out of that road. And again, I'm not prepared to quote what those numbers are, but the point is what I'm saying is I believe that we owe that answer to our residents. They can decide whether they would like to do something or nothing or anything in between, but at this point, we know that there is no funding source for local roads. There hasn't been for many years. In the past, the township had those funds available, and on some rolling basis, the township partnered with the Department of Roads or then the Road Commission to take care of some local roads. We haven't seen those dollars, and there's nothing to indicate that they're coming anytime soon. Whether those dollars do become available or whether the township looks at a plan to fund that themselves, we should have some kind of an idea or plan in place. This committee doesn't necessarily have to spend money, but in order for them to have an idea of how to address the roads and basically look at what efficiencies there could be available to us, we've got to sit down and address some of these things. If this board feels that we should ignore the roads, that's certainly an option. Obviously, I wouldn't have brought this forward if I thought that was the best option. I believe we should have some kind of an idea of what we intend to do or what we would like to do. The investment that individual residents might make into their local road, every study we've seen suggests that it more than pays for itself in increased property values and resale value of the property. So we've got potentially an option to sit back and allow our infrastructure, including our roads, to crumble. We can wait for somebody to come forward and help us repair that, but for decades, there's been no funding coming from the county to do that. Or another option is to take a look at what this cost is. Is the cost $10 or is it $1,000? I believe we have that responsibility to do that legwork, provide that information to the residents, and then let them decide. I know, Mr. Newmer, you don't come to all of our meetings. I know you're here. I don't know if there's anything you have to add to the discussion or.
I guess just a couple of points. When we had the meeting with the residents at the last Special Assessment District information meeting, and it was discussed that there is a potential maybe for, the township to look at doing something like this. And there was a concern raised by the residents because they didn't want to move ahead and establish a special assessment district where they would have to then pay on those special assessments over a 10-year period or something, and then have the township come in maybe a year later and establish a fee or a millage or something like that,
right,
that they would also have to pay for. So they didn't want to be paying for it twice. And so that was really one of the reasons why we wanted to bring this forward and see if there's any interest by the board to move ahead with this or not, before we could maybe advise some of those people following those SADs whether they wanted to pursue that or not. The only other thing I'd mention about the sewer and water interface is you've got limited capital funds available in your sewer and water department right now. And if we're looking at going through and starting to reconstruct roads, we would typically recommend that you look at reconstructing the sanitary sewer and/or the water main at the same time. I know that there have been examples of roads in the past in the township where they paved the road, but they didn't replace the water main, and then the next year they had 2, 3, 4 breaks down the road, and they ended up coming in and cutting into the brand-new pavement in order to dig up the water main. The problem with that is that you need to take a look at your water and sewer rates at the same time as you take a look at how you may pay for roads, because if you introduce this new road work into your program, you're introducing new water main or new sanitary sewer work as well that needs to be funded. And so you need to look at, are you gonna fund it through rates, are you gonna fund it through special assessments, how you might fund that work, so you can build that into the program as well. You don't wanna be in a position where you say, yes, we wanna go ahead and do some road work, and then not have the funds available to do the infrastructure beneath it. That might impact the quality of the road in the future.
And perhaps you could address the issue of where the first dollar is often spent, just like we might not wait until the roof on one of our buildings is leaking to the point where damage occurs on the inside. Sometimes we reach the signs that roof has exceeded its limit or is approaching its limit, and we, do some of that work beforehand. I know that the study that you had presented this board in '09 suggested that some of the roads in the middle quality range are the first to receive funding, and not necessarily the high-end costs of grinding up and rebuilding the road, which is the kind of work that's often associated with replacing water mains and sewer and so forth.
Right. Yeah, the study does talk about that. The basis for the ordering the improvements in the study is that it costs less to maintain something that's already in good condition than it costs to rebuild something that's in poor condition. And so it's cheaper to keep something good than it is to start with something bad and make it good. And so the study goes through, and there's actually an optimization algorithm within the program that looks at how many miles do you have that are in need of preventive maintenance, how many miles do you have that are suitable for rehabilitation, like maybe crack sealing, overlays, things like that, and then how many miles do you have that are completely failed and in need of reconstruction. And the program goes through and optimizes your investment. It says, if I have this much money to spend, this is the optimal way to spend it. And a lot of times what it will do is, especially at lower levels or at funding, the study had several different stages or levels of funding. At the lowest one, basically that was a preservation type of a scenario where we're rebuilding a few of the roads that are bad. Most of the investment went into overlaying, crack sealing, seal coating, those types of improvements on the pavements that are in the either good or fair category to bring them back up to good. And actually some of those roads, I believe, over the 20-year lifespan of the program, they would get a treatment several times. So some of those good roads, as they slip into the fair category, would get a seal coat, bump them up to good. 4 or 5 years later, they might slip down into that fair category again. We might give that another seal coat. So we might end up actually doing preventative maintenance on a pavement once or twice during the program before we would reconstruct something else.
Right. And again, so then some of the roads that qualify for preventative maintenance or seal coating or those kinds of things might be one aspect of it. So that that plan wouldn't necessarily have to address every road all in the first few years and
Right.
dovetail into infrastructure. But again, that's the whole issue. What options are available to the board? What funding is required to do this in what time frame and so on and so forth?
Yeah, and then as you move into a little higher level of funding, you get there is kind of a point where that preventative maintenance only gets you so far, so you can do those, and then after that point, then you take and you start to reconstruct the roads that have failed and bring them back up into the good category, and then those roads then become candidates for that preventative maintenance as they go through the process. So the higher levels of funding, if you look at those, had more of the road reconstruction aspect of it.
And then just maybe another thing, the notion that we have a set of plans for water and sewer infrastructure that's already engineered, I thought we went through that process recently to determine just what we had that had already been designed. I don't know if you could speak to that, or,
Yeah, to my knowledge, you do not have a set of engineered, permitted, ready-to-go plans. There were some concept plans that were done to look at elevations where pump stations might be needed, things like that. But it wasn't anything that's, I would say, construction-ready.
right?
So,
I don't believe I said that.
I'm sorry if I
Yeah.
misunderstood you.
No, there's plans for, if this road's done, you know, we can put this in and that, the concept plans.
Yeah.
I've got, and I'll look that up. I mean, we have that already. It's a big book.
Okay. There was also a case, some of you may have seen, I know it was in the news and some of the engineering publications. One of the townships to the north of us near Lexington, I think it was Worth Township, actually had recently been sued, and they appealed it and lost an appeal. The Department of Environmental Quality had basically identified that township as a community that was aware of failing septic systems, but they sued them because although they proved that the township was aware of that and they did nothing to address it. I'm not saying, I haven't received any notification from the Department of Environmental Quality, but the point is that we're reaching a time, you know, in history or in society or whatever you want to call it, when we spend a lot of our time talking about how neighboring communities aren't respecting the quality of water, and our beloved lake is bearing the brunt of that through poor water quality. But I think we also have to consider that we ourselves have some parts of our township with no infrastructure to address sanitary sewer, and as a result, you know, we are kind of complaining about others not addressing some things ourselves, and potentially contributing to the problem. And who knows? You know, that could become a risk for us. I'd like to think that if somebody approached us on that, and we had, you know, we had some projects in the works, you know, taking a look at this, trying to see, was this something we could afford? Is it something that we need to do? I don't think that right now, today, that this board knows what our options are, what those costs are, if a millage is an efficient way to do it, if an SAD is a better way to do it. And we've asked Mr. Newmer, in anticipation of possibly applying for an S2 grant, we weren't able to contain that timeline. But because he's done some of the work on the center of the township, you know, how does this dovetail? What are those costs? And so I know through the last election cycle, it was a topic that was brought up. I'm not proposing that we have a millage or not have a millage. I'm not proposing that we have an SAD or tell people not to do it. I'm saying that individual neighborhoods are not in a position and are not empowered to look at this issue. This is definitely a problem. We have a lot of streets in our community are in bad shape. You know, even the dirt roads, you know, with a freeze thaw cycle, I'm getting calls from residents, emails saying, we've got to do something just to improve our dirt roads. But the problem is you can spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to improve the dirt roads, and when you're done, you're left with a dirt road. Certainly there's residents that like that, but I would say the overarching new construction throughout our area is on paved roads. So, but we should have an idea what those costs are. Right now, we don't know what that answer is, and I don't think it's the burden of the folks on this street or that street to look at this issue in totality and establish what our options are. So right now, when residents approach us, unfortunately, my answer is, I don't know what that cost is, and I don't know if it's an efficient or a burdensome cost. I would like for us to be prepared to be able to have that answer, and if this board chooses, and when folks ask, we say, well, we'll present it to you and you decide. To me, I believe that's a responsibility that we have.
Well, there's several items here, but first item about the costs. Everybody knows with an SAD, those costs change very, very quickly. The cost of asphalt can go up and down, the cost of your rock, the cost of your base, the cost of your labor. You know, when somebody approaches us for an SAD, those costs might be $100 a foot. You get down to building the project, you know, a year later, those costs can go to $150 a foot depending on, you know, price of oil and all sorts of factors. So I don't think, number one, the study's going to say that this is what the costs are when people approach. You know, I think, you know, we've always run under a system where, you know, with the SADs, I think the engineer gets together and does like a estimate, and we give that to the people, and that's ballpark, but of course, it does change. And that happens on any project with the dredging. You know, sometimes by the time you get to the bidding, sometimes it's a little lower, sometimes it's a little higher, depending on, you know, even if you might have to get into a boring study or soil a lot of variables. You know, second item, you know, I heard that some of the people at the SAD don't want to, you know, pay a millage and then pay on the SAD, pay twice. Well, that's great, but that's been my argument for 8 years. I paid for the paved road in front of my house when I bought my house. Now, the road commission, they're in charge of the roads, so they come after we do that, and they're responsible for the repairs and the replacement of that road. And I think you would find within the community, most people in the community that lived on all of the paved roads share that opinion. I mean, we've paid for it.
But not that they come back and fix it.
Right.
That's the problem.
That would be
But
great.
wait,
The
but
problem
wait,
is they
but-
don't.
But wait, you know, we don't own the roads.
No.
I don't own the roads. I have no business with the roads. I can't even bid, if I did a 10 mil millage and I had $10 million for roads, I couldn't do anything with it because that money just becomes the road commission's money, because they own the roads, they repair the roads, they fix the roads, they replace the roads.
Right.
Okay?
Now,
And
but
I
who
will-
funds
I-
them?
Now, just, you're right. I'm getting double dipped as a resident. You're absolutely right.
Right.
I pay my
We fund
taxes,
them.
I pay my taxes on the one end to the county, and then now I'm gonna be asked to pay a millage, and that's what we're really talking about. We're talking about a millage, because while all this sounds great, at the end of the day, you need money. And, you know, we don't tax in the general fund, so we're gonna have to at some point go out and say we'd like a special millage to do the roads, whatever roads those are, whether that's a main road or, you know, dirt road or replacing other roads. And second part of that question is, like Mr. Newmer said, we don't have a lot of money in our water sewer. You know, how much are the water rates gonna go up? Are we gonna boost them up another 20, 30%? Because that's what we're talking about at the end of the day, to get the capital for some of these projects.
I certainly
That-
know
that's-
I'm not
that-
talking about that.
Well, that's big money.
I agree that that these infrastructure issues are large dollar issues. The problem is, I don't know if they're feasible. At this point, I don't know if $10 per homeowner puts us in a program, or it's $1,000 per homeowner gets us to the point where we can refurbish the roads. And my point is I don't believe that as a representative of the residents of Harrison Township, if I don't know that answer and I can find that answer, that's my job. The problem is, in order for me to do that, Mr. Newmer is telling me that we're gonna need to spend somewhere in the neighborhood of $5,000 to $10,000 to be able to determine what those costs are and look at the township as a whole. We recognize that the Department of Roads owns the roads, but the Department of Roads is us. The federal government is us. If somebody somewhere is gonna find a bucket of money to fix all of our roads, it's coming out of your pocket. If Congress establishes a local road program and they promise a 99% match, where do you think they're getting the money to pay for the 99% match for the roads? The problem is, every time I pay $1 in gas tax to somebody, I hope that some of that comes back this way. If we do look at a plan like this, I'm not saying we have to do it. If there's enough interest and it's a feasible cost that's not a burden to our residents, we let them decide. When we have some other election, at no cost to the residents, we say, would you like a road millage, yes or no? I'm good with either answer. I respect that. But at this point, I don't know if we could do it. I don't know if it's feasible. But I know right now, I would much rather pay $1 in a road millage, knowing that that dollar's guaranteed to come back to the township with potentially some grant or match if we were able to get some matching funds. But if I pay $1 in gas tax, it could all go to roads in Grand Rapids. But I'm not saying we have to do it or not. I'm just saying I'd like to know the answer to the question, and I believe that we've ignored our infrastructure long enough, and we should know that answer. In times that have been much better than current times, we haven't seen $1 come back for local roads. And there's nothing to suggest that that cost has gone down or the funding's gone up. So if we're waiting for somebody to fix our local roads, we'll be waiting a long time. Now, individual communities can, or neighborhoods can do an SAD, and that's certainly one fair and reasonable way to do it. But when we reach the point where more roads and more neighborhoods are asking for SADs, we should be prepared to say, well, look, if there is enough interest, here's what our option is and here's what that cost would be. Not saying you should do it or you shouldn't do it, but let the voters decide. At this point, I couldn't even propose what that would be because I have absolutely no idea what that cost is. And all I'm asking this board to do is authorize something between $5,000 and $10,000. It could be less, but up to a certain amount to spend so that we can come back to this board and say, you know what? $500,000 for 12 years will rebuild every road in the township. Or, man, it's gonna be $2.5 million and nobody wants to spend that. It just isn't worth it. But at least we have some idea of where our roads are. Right now, I don't have that answer. And if this board doesn't wanna do it, it's okay. I believe that would be ignoring our responsibility. And considering as big of a problem as this is, and considering how many people are approaching the board, or approaching the clerk's office for an SAD, I don't think $5,000 to $10,000 is a burdensome number to this township. I think refusing to spend it would be shirking our responsibility. But that's just my opinion. That's why we discuss these things as a board.
Well, before I got interrupted, I was gonna say, you know, regarding these county roads, I'll refer the board back to May 26th of '09. There was an emergency addendum item brought by Mr. Verkest as a trustee. And the emergency addendum was a request for the township to participate with the Macomb County Road Commission in the funding of 50% of $151,000 to fix Metropolitan Parkway at I-94. The board went round and round for about 2 hours, and finally, Mr. Verkest made a motion to pay 50%. I was obviously arguing the same way. The county owns the road. It's their responsibility. They should fix it. You know, everybody else, you know, can't remember if it was Tony or doesn't really even matter. But the other argument on the other side of the coin was, you know, no, the township has to participate. It's not going to get fixed. And what happened? This board, that motion fell down for lack of support. And what happened? The county fixed Metropolitan Parkway on their own dime because it's their responsibility. And I've been saying this for 8 years, and I'll say it again. I'd be more than willing to take the $10,000 and give it to Mr. Huth to sue the county for not following their obligation to fix our roads. And Mr. Verkest is right about one thing. Our money goes to Shelby and goes to Mount Clemens, and these
Oh, I didn't
roads
say
here,
that.
and these roads, well, what other way? The county has not come and fixed our roads
County's not
since I've been,
responsible for Mount Clemens.
since I've been here in 18 years. I'm just making the point that the money, the PA 51 money and other monies that we get, and tax money and gas money goes to the county, and they neglect our roads. They don't fix them.
Yeah, I definitely did not say that.
And it's their responsibility at the end of the day, and I'll just leave it at that.
Well, I don't know that there's any new discussion to be had about this. Like I say, I'm good either way. I think it's a responsibility we have. At a bare minimum, I think it's a responsibility I have to this board to bring it forward. If this board sees value in it, they can make a motion and approve it, and if they don't think this is a responsibility of our board, that's okay. The issue will fail for a lack of a motion or support. So I'd entertain a motion, and if not, we'll open up the floor for public comment, either way.
I just have something to say if I could.
Yep.
So I guess the only thing, I'm not against this by no means. I think we have to do some with our roads. I guess the problem I'm having is private subdivisions, private roads versus county roads or public roads. We have a lot of people in the township. Huron Point being one, and one of the largest ones.
Mhm.
In 1985, 1984, paid a lot of money to have those roads paved,
Mhm.
water, sanitary, not sanitary, but actually rainwater sewers put in,
Storm
pump
sewers.
stations
Yep.
put in. The thing is, I guess my thought is, and there's other areas, not just Huron Point.
Mhm.
But I think if you're gonna look at this, I think you need to exclude the private roads. Because there's no way, you know, if we do this and we say, okay, we wanna go for a millage, who's first? Mine because I'm dirt. No, mine, because our roads are 15 years old, they need a cap. You're talking about a millage that you'd have to collect for probably 15 to 20 years to do everything in the township.
That's a good guess, but
Okay?
that's my whole
So-
point, I
so-
don't
but-
know.
But the point I'm trying to make is, if we do this, my thought is you need to focus on those main roads that everyone travels on. So if in fact you go out for a millage, you can say, these are all the roads that everybody travels on and everybody shares in Harrison Township. Your private subdivisions, if you need them repaired or paved, that still remains as an SAD. I
Right.
mean, you can't double dip here because that's what's happening.
Well, let
If
me-
you open it up to everything, I think you're gonna double dip.
Right.
And that's, you heard it from Mr. Newmer as well.
Right, well, let me address that, that's a great point. The county, graduates or grades our roads, not necessarily, I mean, there's several ways that we do this, but in terms of how they're used or what their function is, so, town hall, Lance Cruz, those are what they consider to be collector roads. So they participate, in some cases, town hall was 50%, obviously, both sections of Lance Cruz, the county assumed 100% of that cost. Our collector roads are already maintained by the county. North Point Parkway recently was a candidate for and received funding for concrete restoration. Metro Parkway, as Mr. York pointed out, was recently, within the last couple of years, a candidate for concrete restoration. The collector roads, I guess what I'd say is, we don't have a problem with the quality of collector roads. So South River, North River
I
Road,
disagree with you.
okay,
Because if you travel down 16 Mile Road between Jefferson and I-94, it's falling apart. And they go in there and they repair the worst blocks of concrete, and the rest is trash.
well,
South
yeah, I
River
might,
Road, South River Road
Yep.
is gonna need a cap.
absolutely. But my,
Jefferson,
Yep.
north of 16,
Right.
needs a cap.
right, my point is that the county in their Department of Roads, in their road maintenance plan, those roads are a part of it. We haven't contributed to the cost of Metro Parkway, Jefferson, South River, North River. There are certainly sections of all our roads throughout the entire county, and I guess you could argue Michigan and the United States, that are in bad shape. What I'm saying is the county currently addresses those. I would not propose any funding for South River, North River, Metro Parkway, Jefferson, Lance Cruz, Town Hall. The county already has a program for that, and occasionally they'll ask for some participation, but for the most part, they handle that using our Act 51 dollars.
So-
But
so-
they'll never come to our local roads.
Okay, so I gotta understand then,
Yep.
what this is targeted towards,
Well, it's-
because I'm struggling a little bit.
Just right, I mean, it sounds like we're arguing about the outcome of a committee that isn't even formed yet because we haven't decided whether we want to do it or not. We're arguing about what that outcome's going to be.
Right, but it's
Without,
a-
without deciding whether or not the committee is even, you know what I mean? That's,
Right.
I mean, we're arguing about what
That's
may
fair,
come.
but I think I can address Mr. Tominello's question. I would not be proposing any committee, any exploratory committee, or any expense to address South River, North River, any collector roads. This is an issue relative to local roads. Now, you have to be careful, local roads and private roads are two different things. So a local road such as, gosh, I don't know, Pine Ridge. Pine Ridge is a local road. Milan or Milan is a private road. But how would we address those? How do we address dirt roads? Is it feasible to say that this road millage would completely fund the construction of a paved road where there's a dirt road? I don't think so. But I don't think it would be fair, if we were to consider a millage, to ask people on a dirt road to pay for a millage and receive nothing in return. So Mr. Newmer had pointed out, for example, one of the things that he's seen is there's a cost for rehabilitation per mile, and there's a cost of construction of a new road per mile. So you might say, well, this would offer, let's just say that the cost of reconstructing a road is $25,000 per mile, and the cost to build a new road is $100,000 per mile. Again, these are just fictitious numbers. You might say, well, if that can be, proved, then maybe the committee proposes a 25% match for anyone on a dirt road that wants to pave the road, some participation. But it wouldn't be fair to say, well, the folks on Street X paved the road, but the folks on Street Y chose not to, and these folks paid for it, and these folks get nothing. Again, I'm saying, I don't know what that answer is, and I think that's where Mr. Witt's point. What I can say though is this, I'm not proposing that we spend a dime on South River and North River. We already spend those dimes. Our gas taxes pay for those roads. And when we have roads that reach that point, like Metro Parkway, you know, as an advocate of the residents, and when I saw Mr. Hoffner and then I was at the Department of Roads, I regularly complained about Metro Parkway from Crocker to Harper or from Crocker to the Spillway. And that was, in my opinion, the worst stretch of road we had in Harrison Township, not including local roads. There are other parts of our roads, but as those dollars come available, the county looks at, they have Tiger funds, TIP funds, they have all these different funds that come, and they have a rotating schedule. A lot of that is influenced, I see Mr. Swikowski. SEMCOG plays a large role in some of those. Unfortunately, when we talk about Metro Parkway, nobody's complaining about traffic on Metro Parkway. When folks talk about spending $1 on Metro Parkway, they're talking about adding lanes and widening as we travel west. So our issue then becomes one of just maintaining our road. And I won't say that there aren't sections of Metro Parkway that are in disrepair. I wouldn't call it failing or horrible condition. But I would definitely say the section by Crocker up to the Spillway was in bad shape. That was rough. Folks, you know, you get a pothole, you were causing damage to your car, you know, you go to put your brakes on, you hit something, and, you know, that was a rough stretch of road. The county has that responsibility. I don't want to cross the line and start taking that over. But as it pertains to local roads, they haven't spent a dime on reconstruction. They'll come out and cold patch if it's a public road, a public local road. A private road, they won't spend any money on. But you mentioned Huron Point. Potentially, the committee might say, well, at this point, at this phase, the roads in Huron Point are eligible for a cap. And that would be the best dollar to be spent in that area to extend the life of those roads. But I don't know that. And I don't know how I don't know how I could come back with a study to this board or to the residents without being able to identify particular roads. So when I asked Mr. Newmer about the current study that he had, it's based on PACER data, which is an acronym from SEMCOG. SEMCOG did an analysis of the roads in '08, which supported this, 08 and '09. And they said we have 15.2 miles of road that's a grade 3. And we have 7.6 miles that's a 4. Well, I don't know what my road is. I would want to know, and I said to Dave, before we could propose to this board and the residents whether or not they want to look at a millage, we've got to know what Memory Lane is. What grade is that? What grade is Huron Point? What grade is Riverbend? And then let those people decide, well, based on that, no, this doesn't suit me personally, I'm against it. Or, yeah, this does benefit me, I think this is the right thing, I'm for it. My point is as folks are approaching me saying, what are we going to do about the road? Some folks say, do nothing. Some folks say, we should have a millage. Some folks want to do an SAD. All of those decisions aren't decisions that I make and really aren't decisions this board makes. I've come to the realization that any of those funding options have to be voted by the people, either locally on the street through a petition process or voters as a whole throughout the whole community. And my point is if they ask me which one's better, I don't know. I'd like to know so that I could say I'm for it or against it. That's all I'm asking to determine. But it wouldn't be for collector roads, it would be for local roads.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, the only thing with the roads, and it goes hand in hand, we can't go repairing roads. I'm not gonna approve repairing a road if they need sanitary sewers.
Correct.
I don't care if it's an SAD or what, because I'm not gonna put a road in, and 5 years later and say, guess what, we're gonna put the sewers in, let's tear up the road.
Absolutely.
And put them in, so it's like, I think people have to be aware that, I like my road fixed, I like it paved. Say, well, guess what, you don't have sanitary, so, you wanna do that, fine, we're gonna do the road, but first we're putting in sanitaries and you're all gonna hook up.
Right.
We'll see what they're,
But that's the whole point. And again, I could point to a conversation or an email in the last 2 weeks from a resident who said, I don't think we need sewers. But I can say I've probably heard from more residents who would say, when are sewers coming down my street? I don't get to decide that. Someone else gets to decide it. But I feel that we have an obligation, a responsibility to make that available. I think it's fair to say that a majority of folks who are on septic systems are well north of us. They're not in such maybe a densely populated area. They're not so close to the river and to Lake St. Clair, I think it's time for us to look at that. But that ultimate decision won't be mine. If it's an SAD that funds it, folks individually vote on it, but we should have that information available to them. That's my point. So that's the reason why I'm bringing it forward. But again, I don't mistake my passion for this for saying that I'm for it or against it. I'm for the study. I'm passionate about that. Because when folks come to me and say, well, should we do this or should we do that? You know, well, I've got an opinion. I want to find out. On this, I have limited knowledge. I don't really know if it's a good or a bad deal. I don't know if it's a 1 mil, 10 mil, or a half a mil project. And I don't think that we're doing the job we should be representing residents unless we can answer that question and then let them decide.
I mean, I don't hear a lot of, I mean, I hear the argument over spending $10,000. If the argument is the $10,000 and not taking, maybe the committee meets once or twice and brings a more firm proposal back so we know what we're getting. Because I think that's part of the, you know, the agita that we're all getting here is that we don't know what we're getting out of something like this. So maybe the committee meets and sits down with the DOR and somebody from the state and says, hey, what's going on? What do we need to do? And then maybe they talk to Dave, sit down with Dave and say, hey, Dave, based on these conversations that we've already had, give us a firm proposal so we know what, you know what I mean? Because it's sort of open-ended at this point. So,
Right.
I mean, I think if we were to move forward with a committee, start there, bring back a proposal, that way we feel a little more comfortable looking at a vote on something, spending money, and then it's not just this open-ended check.
Right.
So, given
Right.
that, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know if that solves everyone's problems, but at least it gets us
Let-
moving, because we need some plan for roads, because
Correct.
the county's never gonna fix my road or your road unless you pay for it personally.
Right. So maybe along those lines, let me give this as an example, kind of expounded on that. If we knew there was an issue with our fire department, whether it was protection or some new method of extinguishing fires, let me just say, and I heard that neighboring communities were looking into it, or it saved a life in this community, I'd go to the chief. And although we might ask him or direct him to look into something, he might end up spending $3,000 of the time that we pay him on a weekly basis to come back to this board with an answer. We'd say, well, that's what we want. We want to know, hey, should we look into this new firefighting system or this new method of extinguishing fires or whatever it might be? If we had an engineer on staff, I would ask that person, hey, look into this. Let's come up with some kind of a plan. We've made a decision not to have that. We have folks we contract with, which is fine. In the long run, I believe it's the best and most efficient way to do it. So I approached Dave and I said, Dave, can you give me an estimate of how much this is going to cost? And he says, oh boy, it's really tough because we could go in this direction, we could go in that direction. I'd really need some direction from somebody. And I felt that it would be burdensome to have a committee of 7, the whole board say, well, this is what we want to do. So I thought if there were folks that were interested and passionate about this, we'd form that committee. I'm good with just forming the committee and finding out. But no matter how we do it, we're going to need some input from our engineer to be able to narrow down the individual quality of roads and the individual time frame and how this all dovetails together. No different than if we've got a fire and we're going to pay a firefighter, we've got an engineering problem here with our infrastructure. We're going to have to pay an engineer to give us advice. If we had one on staff, we just ask him to do it. We don't. So if we're going to ask him to do this work, we've got to authorize the expense. If the board wants to say, form a committee and come back with a proposal for cost, that's okay too. But we're gonna come back probably in something in the $5,000 to $10,000 range. I mean, that was the answer we got from our engineer. That's why I brought this.
The problem is, you know, I just don't know what I'm getting for my $10,000, because at the end of the day, all right, I can do the study myself. I'll get in my car, and when the car goes thump, 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 I'll put a 5 down. And when it goes, oh, maybe I'll put a 3. I think we all know what roads are bad. I mean, just common sense dictates that. And while today, you know, I do a study and I pay $10,000 and Dave comes up with that number, it's always a moving target because those numbers change all the time.
Sure, but you can
And-
sit back and
you
wait
know.
for things to get bad, or you can come up with a plan to fix it. This building's gonna fall down at
Okay,
some
well, let
point,
me
but-
ask the question again. If I do the 10,000, I keep hearing it, but everybody keeps saying it, and then we keep denying it. All I want to know is, I will spend this $10,000 tonight, and I'll make the motion, but I want to know where the money's coming from to do even one project, just one project.
I
within
think
that.
I've said that repetitively. There's two options for funding. One's an SAD and one is a millage. And until I know the numbers, I can't possibly tell you which is best. But I know one thing for sure. If any road in this township that's not a collector road is gonna get fixed, there's only one guy paying for it, and that's us. There is no magic pot of money to fix local roads. So we can sit back and allow them to deteriorate and turn them back into, have every road in the township a dirt road. That's an option. We can allow sanitary sewers to fail, never repair them, and we'll just have a hole going out the back of our yard. But the function of local government is to address some of those infrastructure problems. But no matter what happens, I know the answer to your question. Your pocket and mine, that's the source of money. That's what pays for the schools my kids go to. That's what's gonna pay for the roads that I drive on in my community. There is no other source of money. The only issue is an SAD most efficient? Is a millage most efficient? And once we determine that, we propose it to the voters, and more importantly, they say, we do or do not value this, so we vote for it or against it. And when we're done, we can say we've done everything we can to address our infrastructure. We put all the facts before the voters, and we let them decide. That's all I'm trying to do with this proposal. But the answer to your question, where does the money come from? You and me.
So you're gonna make the
I
motion
know
now?
I'm voting.
Yep. So, again, I don't know if there's other questions. I think we've discussed it pretty thoroughly. Is there a motion?
I'd offer a motion to create a committee of 3 board members, I don't know who would be interested at this point, to a local road improvement committee, with them to review possible options and to meet with the engineer to come up with a firm proposal, a scope of work to be brought back to this board, and I'm gonna set a deadline of May 22nd board meeting to be brought back by then.
So establish a committee and work with the engineer to develop a plan.
Yeah.
Okay?
I'll support that.
All right, we got a motion by Mr. Witt, with support by Mr. Capral. Discussion, board members, I think we've had it.
Well, I mean, if you're gonna establish a committee, shouldn't you put the names in the?
Well, I figured we'd open it up to
First
public
of all,
comment
we have
and
to get-
see who's interested. I mean,
That's fair.
I can say I'd be interested and we could talk about it. I
That's
just
fair.
wanted to see where people were
Sure.
fine.
at on this.
No, all right.
Okay? Did you want to name those individuals now, or are you good with that?
We can do it later.
All right,
That
all right,
Don't
so
matter to me.
I know we've discussed this a fair amount. I think we should, if it's all right with this board.
Sometimes we get into the thing where we change the motion and other people wanna do public comment again.
Sure, I
so
think
that-
the
that's why
understanding
I'm-
is that we're just gonna add 3 people at some point here,
All
and
right.
I don't think that's gonna change anybody's comment.
All right,
Okay,
that's fine.
good. If there's no other board comment, at this time, we'll open up the floor for public comment.
Evening, Board. Bill Servil, resident. Where do I start? First of all, the other day I was reading the newspaper, the lake is at around 573. This road out here is at 583. Yet there's water standing in my neighbor's ditch. Until you address that, you're just spitting in the wind, spending any money on roads.
Agreed.
I told you that when you paved this road over, and it's been already sealed once, and it's going to hell again in 3 years. You need to address the drainage issue. The second thing is, there is no tax millage for roads. As Mr. York said, everybody that lives on a paved road that already has sewer paid a lot of money for that lot one way or another. And I'll be damned if I'm gonna pay a millage to pay for roads that people didn't pay anything for.
Agreed.
So, you can forget that because there'll be one hell of a lawsuit if you try it. The next thing is, what are you gonna get for the 10,000? He hasn't talked about it. They're talking about roads that are already improved. It sounds like you're not talking about dirt roads at all. The center of the township is all dirt roads for the most part. There was a study. My understanding is the sewer that's in Coleridge is only part of the situation. You need one down Ashland, a main sewer, and you need one down Tucker before any SADs in that area can be done. Is that correct, Mr. Newmer?
Public comment.
There's nothing to
Yeah.
connect to right
Yeah,
now.
that's right, we can address,
All
we
right,
certainly
so-
can address the sewer
So
issue.
these people that are coming they're not aware of this probably. They want to do an SAD to pave their road, and even if you wanted to put the sewer in, you can't put it in right now. But in addition to that, what you really need to do is what they did in Urin Point. You have positive drainage along the road, you enclose every every ditch on the whole road, when you do that road, and you put a catch basin in front of every house. And you gotta clean out the county drains too. All of this, and where's the money gonna come from? The place to start is with maybe an SAD for the county drains and clean all the drains out. Because you can't dig the road ditches any deeper until the drains are clean. And I've been living here for well over 30 years. When I bought a lot in 1975, the Petticonla drain ran through it, and I was told they were gonna clean it out. Well, here it is, 2013, and it still hasn't been cleaned out. Only up to your house, not the rest of it though. So, what are you gonna do? Is this study gonna address the drainage? Is it gonna address putting the sewers in? Is it gonna address that each individual street has different problems? Not for $5,000 or $10,000. You're talking $50,000 or $100,000 study. And like Mr. York said, at the end of the day, the price is gonna be different anyway, and in my opinion, the only proper way to pay for it is with an SAD. Thank you.
Linda Karczewski, resident. I guess I have a couple questions because years ago, the last time we had a water rate increase, I believe we were having the rate increase so that you could put money into the sewer system to put in those sewers in the middle of, to connect the sewers. Go back and look at your minutes, and I believe that's what they talked about, that they were going to put those sewers in the middle so that the individual streets can connect. And that was one of the reasons why we had a sewer increase. And our water rates went up and everything else, and part of it was for the sewers. Was that they talked about back then, what Mr. Serville said, about those sewers in the middle of the township so that the other streets can connect with them. Go back, and I believe that's why we had that water rate increase. That was part of the water rate increase, that's what it was supposed to be for, that you have money in the water department to fix those sewers up. Okay, one of the other things, Mr. Supervisor, is at the beginning, you said you weren't gonna name any streets. And then, at the end, you said you're gonna start naming streets. If you're gonna do a study, is it gonna include the sewers and everything else that's needed on the street, or just the roads? If you're gonna do a study, shouldn't you do it for the sewers to let the people know exactly on what street, how much, an estimate of what it's gonna cost for that street? Because when you put in, compare with our street, all right, every time it rains, we have a hard rain, my neighbor's yard is flooding. She had to go and put in a septic tank, and not a septic tank, I'm sorry. Oh, my mind just went blank. Pardon me? Well, it pulls the water. It's like you have in for your basement. I know my mind just went.
Sump pump.
Sub pump into her backyard. Now across the street from us, when they build that off of Jefferson, next Eddie's Drive-In, the gentleman build a office building back there. The houses right behind them, they flood. They had to do the same thing, the people that don't want their backyards flooded. They have told you repeatedly about this problem. Nothing has been done on it. So if you're gonna charge me, if you ever decide to go for this, you're gonna fix my street first, since my street's already paved. Are you gonna go and fix their backyards? It's not the street that needs done, it's a sewer system that needs done. We don't know why it's flooding. We'd like to know that too. I would like to know what each street costs, because if I'm living on a street that's not paved, I would like to know what my street's gonna cost, including the sewers. But my other thing, and then I'm done with, once you put these sewers in, who's gonna make those people connect? Is there gonna be a new law saying you have to connect? Because you got people right on Ballard. You put sewer system in there, and everyone is not connected. And there's no law saying you have to connect. So if you don't tell them they have to connect, you got the same problem all over again.
Thank you.
Good evening, Lord Randy LaForest. I lived in the center of the township for 32 years. It's just been the last 5, 6 years that I haven't. Just moved down the street and around the corner on the river. Today I spoke to some of my former neighbors. I still consider them my neighbors. They do not want your sewer project. They do not want your road project. The roads, surprisingly, have been maintained by the county with the dirt. I see them down Long, just about every other day, grading, brings dirt in. It's amazing. They take care of them better now than they did 20 years ago. Yes, there are bumps, and yes, there are times of the year, especially after rains, snow, or when the ground is thawing. Yes, you're going to get soft spots. But it's nothing like it was 30 years ago where you went in up to your axle. They've done a lot of things since then. But they all say the same thing. They don't want it. Their septics are working great. They don't want cars zipping down and cutting through their neighborhoods. People they don't know, because right now, they know who goes down their street. And if something is wrong, they know it. Let me tell you, I did your job about 10 years ago, maybe a little longer. For about 4 years or so, every day I called the county to get the ditches on Winkler cleaned out between Coolidge and Grover. Every day. Finally, they came out. And they didn't do just one. They did both sides. They graded it properly, replaced the culverts, had the people replace the culverts so it drained right. Then they also did about 300-400 feet of resurfacing the road because it was older people there. And when they had done it, they only did one side. So then the water accumulated on the other side. I called them back up and said, you gotta come fix this. They ended up coming and fixing it and just redoing that whole stretch. Call the road commission. If everybody on the board calls every day, the residents call every day. I got to be on a first name basis with the secretary over there. But I did it. And it happened. And I really wish I was living back there because I would rather live on those dirt roads. And one other thing, don't come after me for a millage to pay for somebody else's neighborhood. Been through that, done that, and it went down in flames because as Mr. Servil said, there will be a lawsuit. You can't even afford the fire department. You're gonna have to go out for a millage for them. And you wanna add more? And the people that are in the center of the township, a lot of them are older, retired, or maybe they're employed, luckily, they might have their hours cut due to Obamacare. You don't know what's gonna happen with that, with the premiums, what that's gonna cost. It just, the water bills. I talked to my neighbor. Her water bill, $112 with the garbage. Mine, $205 with the sewers. She went, oh, no, no, no. And then they have to get a separate meter, which they have to pay for, to water their grass, big lots, and their flower gardens and their vegetable gardens. Yes, people move here, and they want all the things from the city, but they know they're moving onto dirt roads. So they want them done right. Try and get the 51% on an SAD. Do not come after the rest of the township, the rest of the taxpayers. Because I know Larry wouldn't want to pay for Senstock's area any more than he would want to pay for yours, or I'd want to pay for yours, or you pay for mine. Because then I'd come after you and tell you, you better start suing somebody to clean up the river. And you don't want to mess with me on that one. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
You know, if I may just real quick,
Well, I was just gonna say,
Oh,
seeing no
sorry.
other public comment, we'll close the floor for public comment and open up for board comment.
you know, and just to, with Larry, at the end of the day, you just get in these Some people wanna do it, some people don't. Some people want this, some people want a puddle, some people want a new road. And at the end of the day, no matter what study we do and this and that, can we all agree some of the roads need to be fixed? You betcha. But when it boils down to, at the end of the day, you're gonna make some of the people happy and some of the people not happy, and it's, you know, even though everything that we're trying to do is, you know, altruistic, at the end of the day, this is what you're gonna have. A hearty debate.
Sure.
Spirited.
Absolutely. So I'd like to respond to some of the residents' questions and comments. I certainly agree with the first resident who approached the board that a big part of addressing the roads in the township is the drainage. Town Hall was not a project that we did. It's a project the Department of Roads did. They said, this is what we'll do. We're not gonna address drainage. I think it's important, certainly in our area, that we do address drainage, and I think this definitely has to be a part, so I agree. Another resident discussed the issue of having sump pumps in yards. I don't know that a lot of residents know this, but Harrison Township, I suppose they know this, Harrison Township is a relatively flat place. We don't have enough pitch in our land for water to drain naturally. The township's water and sewer department currently maintains 28 pump stations to lift our sanitary and storm sewer just to get it run out. I mean, we're too far away from even the sanitary system. They say stuff rolls downhill. Well, it doesn't. It rolls down to a hole, and we lift it up and let it roll some more because we're too low. Stuff doesn't drain to the lake. We have to pump it high enough so that it can get to the lake. So the drainage issues that some of us have in our yards are drainage issues that a lot of us have. And that's the nature of living as close as we do to the water and as low in terms of our elevation. Resident asked, in the center of the township, without extending the sewers, can we do it? I don't even have to ask Mr. Newmer. It is not impossible for us to add sewers to the center of the township. It will involve some pump and lift stations. Several of our neighborhoods do have sanitary pump stations. Some of the pump stations that exist might have to be upgraded to handle that volume. It's not a question of whether we can or cannot do it. It's a question of how much will it cost, and I have to go back to it, whether people want it or not. I'm not coming after anybody for a millage. It's not my choice. I don't claim to say that I have the say in whether we have a millage or not. In my role as supervisor, folks approach me daily. When are we gonna do this? In the course of one day, I can have a gentleman email me, phone me up, or stop in to say, I need police on my street, there's people speeding. The other day, I had a fellow who emailed me or stopped in or called me to say, you know what? We've got too many cops. I see them writing tickets, and some of those people are 50 years old, and they shouldn't get tickets. You guys should reduce the number of police. Well, you get comments all different ways. In my chair, I get a lot of comments about the roads, and I get a lot of comments about sewers. Not all of them are for it, but a lot of them are. I'm not gonna cram a millage down anybody's throat. Mr. York said it best, some want it and some don't want it. I don't wanna decide. I wanna make sure that this board and the voters are educated and they get to decide. But I don't think it's responsible for us to sit back and do nothing. So I'm not looking to make a decision. I wanna collect the information and let the residents make that decision. But right now, I don't have that information. Should sewers be included in that look? Absolutely. But not to say that they must happen or that they shouldn't happen. That's a decision people have to make. But again, I made reference to a recent court decision where one of our peers was sued because the township did nothing to address failing infrastructure. If the voters say we don't want sewers, I'm not liable. I went through the study. I'm not proposing we spend hundreds of thousands of dollars. I'm proposing that we look at what these costs are, what it'll take. Mr. Newmer already, per the direction of this board, had a committee, and you mentioned Jan and yourself and I sat on it. And he's already laid out, I think there was, going by memory, it's really not critical for this discussion, maybe 6 districts that Mr. Newmer split that center from South River to Metro Parkway, from Town Hall to Hazel. There are some sewers, some have to be extended. Some, based on elevation, can gravity feed to an existing point. So at some point along the middle of that area, you can gravity feed and get to South River. But if you continue to come uphill, pretty soon that sewer line's sticking out of the ground. Well, you've got to stop there. You can't get there. So some of them have to drain in another direction. In some of those areas, pump stations would be required. So we already have a general idea of what that work would be. And he's got some preliminary engineering estimates. One of the comments from a resident, well, that price will change, it's a moving target. Well, shoot, we should just stop going to the doctor, because tomorrow it's gonna be more, so don't anybody, if you got cancer, just start digging a hole, because the doctor could change his price. I recognize those costs changing, but the problem is, the solution to changing costs is not to do nothing. That's the wrong answer. We can take a look. There are standards. MDOT every year publishes an average of unit prices for those things. If we establish that a road is this many miles and it's in this condition and it needs this level of work, those numbers do change every year. But we don't know what any of those numbers are right now. We can't even begin to say we should or shouldn't do these things. Water and sewer increase for the center of the township, absolutely false. The costs to improve any part or to add sewers to any part of this township have never been a part of the increase. The resident may be thinking of a plan that several boards instituted where they wanted to take funds and add sewers to one portion of the township, and that was the neighborhood that's north of Pete's Party Store. That area, and they said, we're gonna put in sewers there. When folks hook up, they'll generate sewer fees, and those user fees can be used to finance parts of the sewer system and other parts of the township. But this board definitely has not looked at any water or sewer increase that was slated for an improvement. If folks want sewers, they're paying for them. That individual neighborhood is gonna bear that cost. It would not be fair to put that cost on other folks that have already borne that cost. One of the questions, will the study name individual streets? Absolutely. I may not have made that clear. What I said is the study that was done in 2009 for this board did not name individual streets. It was using Pacer data, and it was an assemblage of all the roads in the township and other communities. So each township or each city got a list of their roads, and that list said, you have 8.7 miles of this kind of road, you have 9.2 miles of that kind of road. The problem is we can't translate that into each individual neighborhood and see where those roads are. Should this include dirt roads? Should it include sewer roads? These are all great questions. The problem is we don't know, and I don't think an advertising agent and a retired firefighter and an IT professional should really come up with those answers. We should go to our engineer. We should ask for support from that firm to come up with what these answers to these questions are. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We're not the first community to pave a road or look at sewers. And that is what local government, that's a service we provide. Come up with those numbers. I'm not cramming this down anybody's throat. I just want answers. So that when Mr. Smith calls me next year, you can say, we looked into it. The cost was 3 mils. And we just thought that there's no way that folks in this day and age are gonna pay 3 mils, so we've gotta wait until things get better. Or, the cost could be, all of that work can be done for 3/4 of a mil. We think that's not a burden, so we're gonna ask the voters to decide. We're gonna put it out, we'll have public hearings, we'll have workshops, we'll have charts on the wall that shows what your street is, and then each individual person can decide. That's all I'm proposing, but I'm definitely not cramming a millage down anybody's throat. I'm merely saying we should all be educated. This board of 7 should be educated, and resulting from that, we should be prepared to educate the voters that we represent. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, we've got a I'm sorry.
Go ahead. If we would like to assign the people.
Oh, we can do that. I'd certainly have an interest. I have a passion for this. I don't hope that's evident. I would like to be a part of that. And like I say, I hope, honest to God, on a lighter note, I hope folks understand. I got folks who stop into the office and they got a problem with the cat next door. I mean, there's all different kinds of things. But then you've got some very legitimate concerns from people. I don't think it's our job to address the cats in the yard next door. But local roads and sewers, that is a function of local government. A lot of our peers, a lot of our neighboring local communities address the roads through a millage. A lot of the townships, when you go to the Michigan Townships Association, they have road millages. And certainly there is no other agency or entity that's gonna come in and put sewers in for us.
You're not gonna see any roads coming, like through the TIP Transportation Improvement Program.
Right.
If you look every year You know, because SEMCOG is the clearing agent for all federal money. And the only thing you'll see in Harrison Township at any time, excuse me, of any improvements is Metro Parkway.
It's because our roads
That's the
don't,
only road.
our roads don't go anywhere other
That's
than
right, we
to
are
our
a
homes.
destination.
Right.
You know, it's like, they talked years ago, well, you're gonna have, South River Road's gonna be 5 lanes. For what reason?
Right.
It
that's
goes no
crazy.
place.
Right.
North River Road, it goes no place, you know?
Right.
They dead end, you know, at the lake, so it's like, that's why you're not gonna see any federal funds, any Tiger funds, anything coming from any other source.
Right. Now, the Public Act 51 monies that do
Yes.
come back, those are the funds that took care of Lance Cruz, that were a part of Town Hall, that are the funds that support work at Jefferson, South River, North River, those kinds of collector roads. But you're right, that doesn't even qualify for the federal dollars, and
Right.
it's certainly not gonna ever hit our local roads.
And I don't know who else interested. I would be willing to serve on this committee. If we,
All right, well,
so with Mr. Verkest and I, that's 2 if somebody else is.
Don't look at me.
is there another board member willing to serve on a committee?
I'd be willing to serve on that
Capral?
committee. Just wanted to give you an opportunity.
Sure.
You know, I mean, it really doesn't matter. I mean, whatever.
All right, is there any discussion further? I think we talked this one out. We've got a motion by Mr. Witt with support by Mr. Capral to,
There is
I'm
one
sorry.
question. Is the committee authorized to spend 10,000 or not?
that was
Nope.
not part of
This
the motion.
Okay.
Nope, we're gonna be
Okay.
bringing back a more firm proposal
Oh,
from the
okay.
engineer
was
at the May
stating that.
22nd meeting.
Well, I'm just clarifying. A lot of discussion.
Yep, so there was a motion by Mr. Witt, supported by Mr. Capral, to appoint Mr. Witt, Mr. Capral, and myself to a local road improvement committee, and direct that committee to work with the engineer to come back with a firm proposal to establish such a study, no later than the May 22nd, 2013 meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. We'll open up the floor for public comments.
Linda Karczewski, residence. I think you misunderstood me, Mr. Supervisor.
Apologize.
I did not say, what I said was that when they raised the water rates for all the township, the extra money was supposed to go for improving the sewer systems.
I understand.
And they talked about putting in those, I guess they're called catch basins or whatever it's called, I'm not sure what the word was,